With time quickly running out, President Barack Obama had just 12 days after Congress passed the latest National Defense Authorization Act to sign or veto the law. President Obama was able to make the deadline and recently signed the act into law in order to fund the Pentagon in 2017. Also hidden deep in the NDAA Act is the Countering Foreign Propaganda and Disinformation Act, first introduced by Ohio Senator Rob Portman. Now, critics argue the act allows the U.S. government to censor some news as propaganda and push a government agenda, in other words, government propaganda, on the U.S. citizens, usually by way of labeling inconvenient stories as fake news. Now, President Obama stated, "My administration strongly supports the bill's structural reform of the Broadcasting Board of Governors, which streamlines BBG operations and reduces inefficiencies while retaining the long-standing statutory firewall, protecting against interference with and maintaining the professional independence of the agency's journalists and broadcasters, and thus their credibility as sources of independent news and information." Now,
well, it made almost no headlines, and yet a major piece of legislation was quietly signed into law a little over a week ago. President Obama signed a bill that allows the U.S. government to combat propaganda by creating its own. It was something called the Countering Foreign Propaganda and Disinformation Act of 2016. Oh yes, this bill, which was on the Senate side, sponsored by Ohio Senator Rob Portman, is designed to combat what is called foreign propaganda from organizations such as RT, China's CCTV, or Iran's Press TV. Here's why Portman says the bill is necessary. Quote, "Surprisingly, there is currently no single U.S. governmental agency or department charged with the national level deployment, integration, and synchronization of whole government strategies to counter foreign propaganda and disinformation." Well, there is now. That bipartisan bill will establish an interagency center housed at the State Department to coordinate and synchronize counter-propaganda efforts throughout the U.S. government. The bill also creates a grant program for NGOs, for think tanks, civil society, and other experts outside government who are, quote, engaged in counter-propaganda related work. Now, let's be clear. This is being sold as countering propaganda, but how do you do that? After all, if government agencies put out information to the public for the sake of altering a point of view, isn't that the very definition of propaganda? In fact, that definition is this: information, ideas, or rumors deliberately spread widely to help or harm a person, a group, a movement, an institution, a nation, etc. So this law essentially funds U.S. propaganda. But isn't that illegal? It was. But no, not anymore, because 3 years ago, wrapped inside the 2013 NDAA, was an amendment that removed the ban on the U.S. government creating propaganda and then showing it to U.S. citizens. That ban, by the way, had been in place since 1948. The 2013 amendment struck down a ban on domestic dissemination of propaganda material produced by the State Department and the Independent Broadcasting Board of Governors. It neutralized the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948 and the Foreign Relations Authorization Act in 1987 that had been passed to protect U.S. audiences from our own government's misinformation campaigns. And in 2013, when that bill was passed, most media said, oh, don't worry, the U.S. government will never actually create propaganda. Well, now they've created a mechanism to fund it. So what you need to know is that politicians claiming we need to fund U.S. government propaganda to protect the public from the Russians and from the Chinese. But there's a reason it was illegal for over 60 years for our government to propagandize the public, to protect the public from our own government. Reality check. Right now, 2 out of every 3 Americans in the latest polls say they have little to no trust in mainstream American media, because 2/3 of Americans already believe that they're not getting the truth. That number will likely only get worse with the legalized American government propaganda. So what is the solution here? Well, how about media just tells the truth, just reports facts, does not act as an arm for political parties or for government institutions? If we want to combat propaganda, both foreign and domestic, then shouldn't we just inform the public rather than trying to control their views? That's Reality Check. Let's talk about it on Twitter.
Are we entering a new era of news and information where website trash is being passed off as the new wave of journalism? What's your call on this tonight? Good to have you with us.
Well, we are. We are, Ed. It's worse than that. What this is inviting, most people don't know this story. They don't know that 2 nights before Christmas, Obama signed a section 2943 to the Defense Authorization Bill that created a truly the closest thing you'll ever get to a ministry of propaganda. Now, he felt like he could do that because of all of these fake news stories. That's what fed this. Most people have no idea what this thing is, but it is truly, Ed, a ministry of propaganda created by Obama while we were celebrating Christmas. Now, the problem with that, first of all, the reason it happened is because of the fake news development that's taken place in journalism. Journalism is no longer recognized as journalism. With this thing, this propaganda of this ministry of propaganda, it gets worse because now the Department, unbelievable, but the Department of Defense now says they're going to spend $60 million giving it out to public entities to answer what they deem to be propaganda. So on one side, we have CNN, MSNBC, and the likes of that creating fake news. Understand, Comcast, that also owns BuzzFeed, also owns MSNBC. So it's a bounce. MSNBC picks up the stories that BuzzFeed creates. CNN does the same thing. That's one side of it. On the other side now, we have the U.S. government who's determining what propaganda is and what it's not. And they're going to respond in kind. They're going to pay people like the Washington Post, is my guess, to create news and create stories to answer stories they don't like.
But
there's never been a time in history like that.
But here comes Hurricane Trump. I mean, he gets right in the middle of this, and he's calling out fake news. He's at the center of it, and he got a disclaimer today from the Kremlin that they don't have anything on him. And Trump said if they did, they would have released it. So where does this go from here, Mike? Are we going to see the United States government now investing in information? I mean, there are state-run entities, but state-owned entities, but not state-run entities. What is this going to be?
Ed, it's worse than that. There used to be a precept of how the government could create propaganda. There was a precept that the U.S. government cannot go after a U.S. citizen with propaganda. This new 2943 that Obama signed, not Trump, Obama made this law while we were sleeping, now says the government can now participate in this thing called fake news. It's fake news because if they deem it to be propaganda, they simply say, we're going to unleash the hounds on this entity that creates something and says something we don't like. Maybe RT talks about fracking.
Well, we were in the intelligence report. We were in the intelligence report, and then the director of intelligence, Mr. Clapper, couldn't say just how much coverage we actually have until Senator Angus King said, well, it's $850 million. That's a heck of a lot more than CNN. So they got some work to do on their intelligence report. Mike Papantonio, great to have you with us tonight. Thanks so much.
The Facebook program saves the CIA money.
Facebook in particular is the most appalling spying machine that has ever been invented. Here we have the world's most comprehensive database about people, their relationships, their names, their addresses, their locations, their communications with each other, their relatives, all accessible to US intelligence. Facebook, Google, Yahoo, all these major US organizations have built-in interfaces for US intelligence. It's not a matter of serving a subpoena. They have an interface that they have developed for US intelligence to use. So they have automated the process. Everyone should understand that when they add their friends to Facebook, they are doing free work for United States intelligence agencies. Our number one enemy is ignorance. And I believe that is the number one enemy of everyone, is not understanding what is actually going on in the world. It's only when you start to understand that you can make effective decisions and effective plans. Now, the question is, who is promoting ignorance? Well, those organizations that try to keep things secret, and those organizations which distort true information to make it false or misrepresentative.
LifeLog before, so I went looking it up, and sure enough, it turns out there was something called LifeLog that was a DARPA project that was announced back in late 2003 and was canceled, or was announced as being canceled, on February 4th, 2004 in this Wired article, Pentagon Kills LifeLog Project. And it says that the Pentagon canceled its so-called LifeLog project, an ambitious effort to build a database tracking a person's entire existence. Run by DARPA, the Defense Department's research arm, LifeLog aimed to gather in a single place just about everything an individual says, sees, or does. The phone calls made, the TV shows watched, the magazines read, the plane tickets bought, the email sent and received. Out of this seemingly endless ocean of information, computer scientists would plot distinctive routes in the data, mapping relationships, memories, events, and experiences. So essentially, this LifeLog was going to be an all-encompassing diary that would have a near-perfect digital memory of not just everything you do, but where you do it and who you do it with and at what times. And it would be this list, but not just a list. It would be itemized. It would be broken into episodes so that you could see that, oh, this event started here and then you went there and then it was completed here. And it would do all of this automatically. It would be following you around, recording everything you're doing and every interaction you're having. Pretty incredible and incredibly creepy stuff. But don't worry, guys. It was all canceled on February 4th, 2004, or at least that's when it was announced canceled by Wired. And just out of curiosity, is it true? Is that the day that Facebook was founded? Well, according to the bastion of truthiness Wikipedia, it is anyway. February 4th, 2004, the website for Facebook was launched by Mark Zuckerberg.
Your users are already on Facebook, and for the ones who aren't, they probably will be soon.
According to Department of Homeland Security reports, Facebook has replaced almost every other CIA information gathering program since it was launched in 2004.
After years of secretly monitoring the public, we were astounded so many people would willingly publicize where they live, their religious and political views, an alphabetized list of all their friends' personal email addresses, phone numbers, hundreds of photos of themselves, and even status updates about what they were doing moment to moment. It is truly a dream come true for the CIA.
Much of the credit belongs to CIA agent Mark Zuckerberg, who runs the day-to-day Facebook operation for the agency. The decorated agent, codenamed the Overlord, was recently awarded the prestigious Medal of Intelligence Commendation for his work with the Facebook program, which he has called, quote, the single most powerful tool for population control ever created.